Jesus made a feminist out of me. It's true. I can't make apologies for it, even though I know that Jesus plus feminist might be the one label that could alienate almost everyone. I understand that. I do. These are, of course, the words of Sarah Bessey, author of Jesus Feminist, a book that has changed my entire view surrounding women. This book, along with other books, stories, and even Bible passages, has shown me that Jesus was an advocate for women who taught and sought to see in the world what Sarah Bessey says is at the heart of feminism, the radical notion that women are people too. So how did I get here? What are the reasons and resources that have led me to where I am? Why do I believe that Jesus was a feminist? And why do I believe he wants all of us to be too? Let's talk about it. I'm Joshua, a Jesus follower and truth seeker. Welcome back to The Truth in Tension. In modern evangelicalism, in the conservative circles that a lot of us grew up in, there is a prevailing theory, a train of thought on how men and women are supposed to act and interact and what roles they're to play in society and in the family. These views typically see men as the head of the house, women as the nurturer, the mother, the homemaker who submits to the husband and generally honors him by doing what he says. I used to believe in this very rigid structure. Not only that, I thought it was God ordained, that man was the head, women submitted, full stop. And it wasn't just the structure. There were core assumptions about men and women that went into this, that were the reasons for it. Men were the head, they were the leaders because, well, we were logical, we were the clear thinkers. Women were emotional, they were illogical, they were easily deceived, like Eve in the garden. They were made to nurture, not lead. Had Adam been doing his job and leading Eve well, the story goes, we would still be in the garden. And because of this structure, the rehearsed narrative, the answers that I knew by heart, because God, in the very beginning, ordained that men should be the leader and women should submit, I thought feminism was not only incorrect, but a worldly and immoral attack on God's design for the family. Not only did this narrative affect how I interact with and interpreted feminism, but it also affected my relationships with women in my life, namely my sister and my mom. I saw myself as smarter, more logical. I felt this sort of superiority because of it. Because of this narrative, I thought myself better than my mother, my sister, and plenty of other women in my life. It drove a wedge between me and the women I loved, especially those in my family, but not exclusive to just them. When something is so core to your beliefs, it comes out in every interaction you have. And there were plenty of interactions where my feeling of superiority toward women definitely came out. In my mind, I was helping and protecting. That's what men did. We helped and protected. But what I was really doing was preserving power. I was a true conservative. I wanted to conserve the power structures and hierarchies based on patriarchal ideas that were handed to me, because that left me on the top. But what happened then changed my life forever, because I really started listening to Jesus, the Bible, and to women. Here's what I mean. When I met my wife, she was a self-identified feminist. I wish I had had the wisdom to listen to her then. She told me her story, her experience, and what she went through growing up as a woman in evangelical circles. And I just didn't believe her. I didn't believe that men were still oppressing. I didn't believe that the hierarchies and structures we had in place were harmful to women. But even though I didn't agree with the facts of what she was saying, I couldn't ignore her pain. That was real, and it needed to be healed. So we began working together on kind of dismantling the ideas she had around biblical womanhood. They were some ideas that I don't think I was ever personally taught, but I recognize that many women in our circles are. There was a lot there we had to deconstruct about what she thought her role was, what she thought she had to give up, what she thought she had to give into. Those were the first cracks in the facade of patriarchy in my life. But though it started cracking it, it didn't break it. Then I started noticing certain things in the Bible that didn't match what I'd been taught, like the time in Romans 16:1, where Paul says, "I commend unto you Phoebe, our sister, which is a servant of the church which is at Cenchrea," except for that the word translated servant in the King James actually means deacon. The word in Greek is diakonia. Phoebe and several other women were not servants in the church, they were in church leadership. But somewhere along the way, the men that translated and interpreted the words chose servant for that woman rather than deacon, not allowing for that word to be translated in its proper context. And that's just one of several passages I could point to. We could talk about the prophetesses. We could talk about Deborah the judge. We could talk about other passages in the New Testament where we see women in church leadership. So why do translations do this? It's because it threatens our hierarchies, our patriarchal power structures. It recognizes women and their contributions rather than forcing them to submit. The next crack in the facade was while I was listening to the Bema podcast, a podcast that I'd come to love for its brilliant takes on the Jewish side of the Bible. Marty Solomon, whom through listening to this podcast I had really come to respect and whose opinion I really wanted to hear. In one of his episodes, he challenged us to listen to the voices on the margins. He challenged us to listen to the voices of our brothers and sisters of color, to the immigrants, to women, to their hurt, their theology, their lives. And I came to notice that there were things that women were teaching me my entire life that I didn't know because I couldn't see them as teaching me. Because I thought that if they taught me, a man, they were somehow wrong and usurping authority. And as I listened, my world changed. I heard story after story of women who said the same thing, who talked of their hurt in our evangelical circles, who talked of the oppression that they were put through. They talked of the rhetoric that made them feel like nothing more than baby factories, of men and women who spoke into their personal lives about their biological clocks and their need to get married. The fact that they were told their purity had to be guarded, but didn't say the same thing to the men. It was different with them. The hurt is real, and denying it doesn't just deny experience, it denies the truth that our women have to put up with. Sarah Bessey's book tied everything together. This quote in the intro hit me hard. At the core, feminism simply consists of the radical notion that women are people too. And then every quote after that. She goes on to demonstrate how Jesus embodied that. The radical notion that women are people too. He lived it out in his life. He forgave an adulteress. He allowed Mary, the sister of Martha, to lavish her most precious gift of oil in an alabaster box and anoint him. He gave women a place and a voice. He said to a Samaritan woman that she had greater faith than any man in Israel. He took the role of women that was little better than livestock and raised them to become equals in his sight. That changed everything for me in my beliefs, in my actions, in my interactions with women and with men. And here's what I mean. I realized as I began reading again with new eyes that Jesus wasn't quietly respectful. He wasn't complacent in the system in which he lived. He was radically affirming to these women. He took the Samaritan woman at Jacob's well and treated her as an equal theologian, not as a woman who needed taught how to think about God. He honored Mary of Bethany's gift by defending her, both to her sister and to the men around. He protected the woman caught in adultery not just from the death of stoning, but from the shame that would have been brought upon her. He even entrusted the news of his resurrection to women before men. I learned through this that women are not spiritual subordinates. They're co-laborers, co-heirs, equal in every respect. There are no pink roles and blue roles, only gifts and callings. Because Jesus didn't reinforce the patriarchy of his day, he subverted it. And if we're to be like him, then that means I need to look at the patriarchy of my day, not affirm it, not reinforce it, not use it as a tool of oppression and maintaining my power, but subvert it. I've learned, especially regarding minorities and women, to listen more and speak less. I learned that sexism and misogyny aren't things we should just put up with because somebody says it's in the Bible. Even if it's subtle, it needs to be called out. It needs to be changed. And frankly, men, that falls on us. It is the responsibility of those with privilege to advocate for those without. So we have to use our privilege and our platform and the fact that men will only listen to us to advocate for our sisters in Christ, to bring them up to equal footing, because that's where they belong, as co-heirs with Jesus. There is no Jew nor Greek, no bound nor free, no man or woman. So to the church, stop hiding behind roles and order. Start imitating Jesus. Let women preach, let them teach, let them lead. Don't do this because culture demands it. There are plenty of things that culture is wrong about, but do it because Jesus already did it. Stand with women, not because your culture does, but because Jesus did. And to the hurt, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for every pulpit that silenced you, for every man who thought he was better, and for the part that I've played in propagating that myth. You are not secondary. You are not less. You bear the image of God fully. Jesus sees you, and so do we. So Jesus made a feminist out of me, not in spite of Scripture, but because of it. Because if feminism means believing that women are fully human, fully gifted, and fully called, then Jesus was the first one to live that out. And following him meant unlearning a lot of things I was taught were biblical. There came a point in this unlearning, this deconstruction, where I wasn't even sure I could believe Christianity at all anymore. Not because of Jesus, but because what had been done in his name. That's what I talk about in this video, why I almost left Christianity, but didn't. If you're wrestling with all of this too, I think it'll be a pretty helpful video. So I'll see you over there. Until then, go in peace, walk in truth, and follow always the law of love.